I have several questions. What is the highest technique you hope to achieve?
To have no technique.
Very good. What are your thoughts when facing an opponent?
There is no opponent.
And why is that?
Because the word I does not exist.
So, continue.
A good fight should be like a small play, but played seriously. A good martial artist does not become tense, but ready. Not thinking, yet not dreaming. Ready for whatever may come. When the opponent expands, I contract. When it contracts, I expand. And when there is an opportunity, I do not hit. It hits all by itself.
This was the philosophy of the late and great martial artist Bruce Lee. Unless you've been living under a rock, this martial arts genius founded Jeet Kune Do, also known as the way of the intercepting fist. It should be noted that Jeet Kune Do is not a martial arts style, but rather a philosophy of martial arts utilizing the expression of self in combat. As its namesake suggests, Jeet Kune Do adopts the fencing concept of interception and utilizes minimal effort with maximum efficiency and speed. As such, Bruce Lee believes the best defense is a strong offense, and instead of being limited to one style of combat, the fighter should always adapt. He sums this up in a famous metaphor.
Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
The philosophy of Jeet Kune Do is summarized in 5 methods of attacking: simple, angular, or direct attack, attack by combination, progressive indirect attack, immobilization attack, and attack by drawing. Through these methods, one can discover the best methods of stopping punches, kicks, and even deflecting them. Since his death in 1973, Bruce Lee's legacy is celebrated in many forms of media, and as such, has inspired a handful of characters in fighting games in particular. Among them are the likes of Fei Long from the Street Fighter series, Liu Kang from the Mortal Kombat series, Martial Law and his son Forrest from the Tekken series, Maxi from the Soul Calibur series, Kung Fu from the Fatal Fury series, and perhaps the least stereotypical of them all, Jackie Bryant from the Virtua Fighter series. In today's episode, we'll be focusing on the character who's not only one of the most powerful fighters in Dead or Alive, but is also the only contestant to ever win 2 Dead or Alive tournaments on his belt. As usual, this will be based on the retcon Dead or Alive Dimensions storyline, covering the differences with the original story after the 8th episode. Without further ado, get ready your glass of water for the 5th episode of Dead or Alive Lore Explained, featuring the 2-time DOA champion, Jann Lee. Being among the original 8 playable characters in Dead or Alive, Jann Lee was one of the easier characters to create for Team Ninja, as it seems almost every fighting game these days needs at least one character inspired by Bruce Lee. Aside from a name change, the process of designing the character was relatively simple. Jann Lee has an overall tan-skinned complexion with spiky dark brown hair, light hazel eyes, and slightly low-arching eyebrows, which make him appear as if he's always frowning. He has a muscular build with very defined biceps, arms, chest, abdominals, and back. Most of his fighting attire choice includes kempo pants, kung fu suits with a dragon emblem, and even the famous yellow tracksuit worn by Bruce Lee in his final film, Game of Death. But even Jann Lee has to make a living too, and as a bouncer for hire at nightclubs, he has to look the part. Even so, dressing formally won't stop Jann Lee from doing what he does best if someone goes out alive. Jann Lee has but one goal in life, to become the strongest fighter of all time. As such, he is highly competitive and is always looking for strong opponents to improve himself. His attitude inspires some of his fellow contestants and even garnered respect from others, chief among them, the famed Super Ninja himself, Ryu Hayabusa. Jann Lee adopts a dynamic but loosely exaggerated form of Jeet Kune Do, utilizing a handful of quick strings and hard-hitting attacks, that send the opponent flying across the screen. He has a track record for extremely good air juggle options, and even a handful of moves popularized and inspired by Bruce Lee himself. Perhaps his most notable move in his arsenal is the Dragon Gun, a unique and deadly offensive hold that dislocates the shin bone, temporarily stunning the opponent, allowing him to fall with a guaranteed attack within a specific window. If you get caught in this, well, prepare to take that free hit and whatever loss of momentum you have, because the Jann Lee in the right hands will give you a hard time. Whether his motivation to be the best fighter generally comes from his love of fighting, or to fill a large void understandably missing in his life, none can deny that Jann Lee is not only one of the most iconic male DOA characters, but also one of the best Jeet Kune Do archetypes in fighting game history. Well before the events of Dead or Alive, Jann Lee's lifestyle was a harsh and lonely one. Raised an orphan for as long as he can remember, he never even saw the face of his parents, who were killed in a yet unknown accident. Throughout his childhood, he was always hungry and begging for food to stay alive. But he was only met with scorn and violence. One day, he would watch Bruce Lee's films, and has since been motivated to become strong. In a world where the weak can't survive, only strength can help him prevail. And prevail he did, through sheer willpower and training. At the age of 14, Jann Lee was more than capable of defending himself when he needed to. It puts his strength to the test when a group of thugs gain up on a girl no younger than himself, much to the girl's chagrin. Despite this, Jann Lee walked off quietly, and their paths wouldn't cross each other again for another 6 years. Jann Lee was no more than just another competitor in the first Dead or Alive tournament, with little fanfare or expectation regarding his skill. He only joined for the love of the fight. Despite this, Zack would consider him his rival at the time, and he received even more attention when a girl he saved 6 years ago joined the tournament specifically to fight him. Being little more than annoyances to him, it is believed that Jann Lee eliminated both Zack and Lei Fang from the first tournament, and was eliminated himself by Kasumi in the semifinals. In the second Dead or Alive tournament, Jann Lee's motivations remain unchanged. However, unbeknownst to him, a supernatural presence is influencing the events of the tournament, a presence the super ninja Ryu Hayabusa intends to stop. During the tournament, Jann Lee would cross paths with Lei Fang once again, the latter claiming she's been trained to be a part of his world, and once again, Jann Lee would defeat her. He then encounters Ryu Hayabusa, and words will be exchanged. Hayabusa tries to warn Jann Lee that the tournament is more dangerous than he can imagine, and Jann Lee, in a manner of speaking, basically tells him to shut up and mind his own business. Now let's process that again for a moment. Jann Lee telling Ryu Hayabusa, a highly skilled super ninja of human-dragon hybrid origin, who summons powerful ninpo, Izuna drops opponents for days, and wielding a dragon sword that's capable of cutting through demons and machines like a knife through butter, to shut the fuck up and mind his own business. This was how you knew that Jann Lee was the real deal in the martial arts tournament. He didn't give a shit about making money or making friends. He's straight to the point, we gonna fight or nah, no fuss given. And how we know he's the real deal? Well, look at Hayabusa when Jann Lee moves his hand away. He flinched. That kind of body language screams out, oh shit, this dude's a real ninja. I'm not built for this kind of work. But seriously though, he didn't flinch. In the end, Jann Lee was eliminated by Ryu Hayabusa, arguably for the better, taking second place. But despite the loss, his fighting spirit did not waver, and he tests his strength by destroying giant trees one by one. Before the third tournament begins, Jann Lee would confront Lei Fang once again aboard the Freedom Survivor, but the latter persistently requests to challenge him. Jann Lee refuses, walking away from her. Annoyed, he tosses Lei Fang to a dining set, which draws concern from Hitomi. Despite this, Lei Fang insists for her not to interfere. Jann Lee draws his attention away from Lei Fang and takes an interest in fighting Hayate, the man sitting across from Hitomi. While the outcome is never explained, what we do know is that during the events of the tournament itself, Hitomi would have a shot at fighting Jann Lee later. Jann Lee's mindset during the fight would garner a newfound mutual respect from Hitomi, despite her losing the fight.
感じるんだ。
そう、理屈なんかじゃない。
そうだ。
He would then encounter the Italian mercenary Leon, who shares the same goal as Jann Lee to become the strongest fighter of all time. And finally, he would encounter Lei Fang for the third time, as she boasts to defeat the dragon within him, and for the third time, Jann Lee defeats her as well. Despite these feats, Jann Lee was still eliminated from the tournament, and some speculated that it was either Ayane or Zack who did the deed. After the tournament, Jann Lee would resume his job as a nightclub bouncer and butt heads with a very familiar group of customers at a nightclub who, for lack of better wording, decided to mark their own graffiti on the venue table, escorting them outside. However, these customers wouldn't go down without a fight. Little did they know who they were going up against, as if the beating they took from Lei Fang wasn't enough. After making quick work with most of the mob, the leader then made his exit, fleeing the nightclub.
And that would be a wise decision.
During the fourth Dead or Alive tournament, Jann Lee undergoes some Nunchaku training while waiting for his next opponent, who would turn out to be Ryo Hayabusa, the one who warned him about the second Dead or Alive tournament. Impressed by his training regimen, Jann Lee lets him take a brief crack at the weapon, and the two would begin fighting. Not too long after that, Jann Lee's next fight would take him to the strangest locale yet, a land full of genetically engineered dinosaurs, where Hitomi lies in wait, gazing at a hatchling of a pterodactyl. A T-Rex would appear behind him, hungry for food, and Hitomi was the main course. Jann Lee intervenes and effortlessly decimates the T-Rex by aiming for his jaw. Despite saving Hitomi's life, Hitomi has a certain sensitivity to animal cruelty. It believes Jann Lee overdid it breaking the dinosaur's jaw, and the two of them would begin fighting. At the Tri-Tower, Jann Lee would face Lei Fang once again, who initially flirts with him briefly, but he never catches on, forcing Lei Fang to quickly change the subject to a formal challenge. It was that moment the Tri-Tower was on the verge of collapse, and Jann Lee asked Lei Fang if she was still serious about the challenge. Lei Fang still insisted on fighting, and the two battled it out inside the Tri-Tower. Although it was not an official tournament match, the fight was an upset on Jann Lee's part, as Lei Fang defeated him for the first time. After escaping the Tri-Tower and heading back to China, Jann Lee reminisces on his entire past while playing the trumpet to ease his mind before going back to his job as a bouncer, thus concluding the events of the original 4 Dead or Alive games and Dead or Alive Dimensions as a whole. Two years later, Jann Lee is training somewhere in the jungles of South America, where Zack would arrive and send him an invitation to the 5th Dead or Alive tournament after a long hiatus. Needing consent to join, Jann Lee challenges Zack directly. Meanwhile, Lei Fang and Hitomi could be seen spying on him at a distance. Later, in New York, Jann Lee had just finished training at a local gym, leaving to take the train when Lei Fang would follow. Inside the train, the vehicle would slow down abruptly, disorienting the passengers. Jann Lee notices Lei Feng and an old man that was about to stumble in her path, similar to an incident of 2 years ago, and shields Lei Feng. He then scolds her about stalking people, reminding her that she doesn't have to be sneaky to challenge him. Before the two could fight, the train completely turns over, putting the two in an embarrassing position. When Jann Lee arrives at the tournament locale, he stays at Taylor's bar where most of the other contestants are located. He gets in an altercation with Brad Wong for reasons, and Rig attempts to break up the fight. Jann Lee senses a warrior spirit in Rig's eyes and takes an interest in challenging him. Much to his surprise, Jann Lee lost the fight. On the day of the 5th Dead or Alive tournament, Jann Lee would face Bass, going by the also ego of Mr. Strong, Lei Feng, and finally Hitomi in the grand finals, all of which he had proven victorious, and thus became a DOA tournament winner for the first time. In the aftermath of the tournament, Jann Lee did not stay for the closing ceremony, but instead went back to Taylor's bar, deep in thought about the fight he lost earlier in that very place. Looking at the photo of the man who defeated him posted on the wall, he vowed to himself that he would even the score, thus ending the events of Dead or Alive 5 from Jann Lee's perspective. In the events of Dead or Alive 6, Jann Lee has gained some attention from the public eye, to the point where he's even been featured in publications, leading Lei Feng to accuse him of slacking off due to gaining fame. Hoping to save face, Jann Lee challenges Lei Feng right in front of the Chinatown streets. Surprisingly, Lei Feng defeats him for the second time. But something felt off. Jann Lee was distracted, not by Feng, but by his defeat at the hands of Rig, a truth he was not willing to share with Lei Feng. On the day of the tournament, Jann Lee would get over his dilemma in time to focus on the tournament, and defeats Lei Feng once more. During the halftime show, Jann Lee would encounter Rig, this time with the assassin Christie. Irritated, Jann Lee questions Rig on why he isn't attending the tournament, and Rig denies any knowledge of it, which escalates to a fight. It was this moment Jann Lee sensed that the man who defeated him was not himself, leaving Jann Lee puzzled as Rig and Christie walked away. Jann Lee would then proceed to defeat Hitomi in the semifinal match, then face off against the new face in the tournament scene, the local legend of New York, Diego. The two put up an intense fight, but Jann Lee would emerge victorious, becoming a champion for a second time in a row. Despite this, Diego would still attempt to draw Jann Lee's ire for one more round, not caring if it was an official match.
Wait right there!
Hold on! The match is over! Stop!
As a result, the both of them fought until they both tired out. Staring at the sky with a smirk of satisfaction, it's safe to say that Jann Lee has gained a mutual respect for Diego's fighting spirit, and the two may end up becoming friends in the future, thus ending the events of Dead or Alive 6 from Jann Lee's perspective. If you've seen my previous video with Lei Feng, my thoughts on Jann Lee's potential story direction are exactly the same. I still think the whole cat and mouse game between him and Lei Feng is getting stale. I still think the writers should use Jann Lee's obsession with Rig as a way to get him directly involved with the main plot, and I still think the backstory of Jann Lee's late parents is the key to everything. Since Jann Lee is the one and only two-time champion of the Dead or Alive tournament in history, this should draw the attention of M.I.S.T to bring Jann Lee to their side, and who better to manipulate him than Rig, the man who defeated him. Now let's say Rig is an outlier of Victor Donovan's conscience, and he knows something about Jann Lee's parents. He could persuade him with half-truths about Doatek being the reason that his parents died, and the source of his years of suffering as an orphan, evoking a vengeful spirit so strong that he decides to work for M.I.S.T to bring Doatek to so-called justice, believing that M.I.S.T are the good guys trying to set things right. Now I know what you're thinking. How in the hell is making Jann Lee a villain a good idea? The truth is, that's not what I'm suggesting at all. Besides, what Jann Lee doesn't know won't kill his character. In his mind, he'll believe that what he's doing is the right and noble thing to do, and it'll take one hell of a rude awakening to convince him otherwise. And who's the best candidate to wake him up? Lei Feng. Remember, everything that happened between these two started when Jann Lee saved her life from petty thugs. Now Lei Feng may have a chance to pay him back in a meaningful way by saving him from an evil bioweapons organization that'll use him for all he's worth anyway. and when Jann Lee finally learns the truth about his parents, it may give him some closure on how he should live his life and fight for a cause greater than himself, filling the void in his heart that he tried to fill with the one-track mind of becoming the strongest fighter of all time. Whatever direction they take Jann Lee, as long as there is a good fight, you can always count on him to join the fray like a raging dragon.
こいつが俺を裏切ったことは一度もない。
That's it for this episode of Dare Life Will Explain. Tune in next time as we cover the last of the original three girls of Dare Alive, a wrestling superstar with an overprotective father and aspiring dreams that go as far as the limits of her imagination. I'm Osmic, and please look forward to the next episode, Tina, the superstar of 1,000 Dreams. Happy listening.